Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, psychologist Scott Weiner, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 70 years in divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting. You know, I've heard the saying that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
And I felt so outraged when I heard that because I get really angry when I'm scorned too. So
and we've all seen a scorned guy in our practices, haven't we?
We have. Indeed.
We have. Yeah. I got a couple of those.
Oh my God.
And sometimes there's people that get upset by why the other person is leaving the relationship.
Well, there's that. We've seen the scorn that keeps on giving, too. I mean, we've seen the scorn that just won't end, even though the relationship is over. So what about this? What are we going to do?
One of the worst things we see, or like I see in my practice, is people trying to take financial revenge for the person they see as culpable for the end of the relationship.
Yeah, and personal revenge, like want to tell the kids that what this person did to destroy the marriage, and the friends and the family, and
sure.
I think most of the jurisdictions in the Western world today, there are a few jurisdictions where that's not the case, but most of them have no-fault divorce or some version of that. That's certainly the case in California. Where
let's tell the folks exactly what that is, Shawn.
That means if one of you wants a divorce, it's going to happen.
Right. You don't have to ask permission. Well, it's interesting when this really went through, and I studied this in law school with great interest in my family law course as a third-year law student. So, I checked the legislative minutes for the time when Ronald Reagan was the governor of California. That's when no-fault divorce happened here. And the intent was to make it harder to get divorced because we were going to talk about irreconcilable differences. There had to be irreconcilable differences in order to get a divorce, not just reconcilable differences like adultery, It had to be irreconcilable. And so the idea being, well, what is an irreconcilable difference? But, the way that it's been interpreted by the courts is basically you can get a divorce no matter what the reason. We just, I don't want to be married to you. That's irreconcilable. Well, will counseling help? No. Okay. Well, then we're going to get a divorce, and even nowadays, even if counseling might help, it doesn't matter. You want a divorce, you're going to get a divorce. And so we get people now and then that want to say, well, I'm not going to grant her a divorce.
Yes, I've had that. He wants one, but I'm just not going to give him one.
Yeah. And that's just not how it works,
No, they don't know that. But,
we don't,
historically.
they don't know that, right? Yeah.
Yep.
No.
But you're sorry, sir, your wife does not need your permission to get a divorce.
Yep.
It's not like, and it's also not like in some of the Arabic countries where they used to have a thing where if you would send a text message 3 times, this was the rule. I think it was in Uzbekistan, I want to say, or Azerbaijan, one of those stands. And it was, you just send a text message, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you. And that's good enough.
Well, Steve Martin actually covered that with, I break with thee. I break with thee, and then you throw a little dog of poop on her shoes.
Yes. So yes, that's a very legal.
I had I did a divorce for a couple from Iran, and she'd been born and raised here of Iranian descent. He was actually from Iran. When we were going through the situation, he said the biggest mistake I made was not divorcing her in Tehran, because not only would my family have disowned her, her family would have had to disown her too.
So other interesting thing is we learned about this thing called a covenant marriage. Have you heard of that?
You know, this is a recent development for me.
This is fairly new. I remember they were talking about it some 20 years ago. It's in 3 states now. Arizona, Arkansas, and Louisiana. As far as I know, I'm sure I'm going to get letters now if I missed a state. But it was pushed by Christian conservatives who disagreed with the kind of modern trend towards no-fault divorce. And so in order to have a covenant marriage, the couple has to go to, premarital counseling and sign a document called a declaration of intent. And then that declaration, in that document, you promise to disclose anything you believe may jeopardize your marriage relationship, and you'll preserve your marriage if problems arise. You promise to do that. And then in exchange for that, you don't get fault, or you don't get the no fault option anymore for your divorce. You have to show either adultery, domestic violence, or felony that results in jail time. So I guess any just run-of-the-mill felony that doesn't get you in jail, that's not good enough. It's got to be jail time.
God, we're serious here. Well, for all of anybody who might be listening to us, I think this all devolves down to a more general topic, which is, what about when there is, and what about when there isn't any kind of fault and in your relationship, and yet the divorce is either imminent coming your way, or you really feel a need to start anew? How do we deal with that?
Well, I think one of the most important things to recognize is there might darn well be some fault on a moral level. And that's okay to see that. But I think there's also this thing, I mean, Scott, you could probably speak better to this. These bad things that happen that end a divorce, they rarely happen in a vacuum.
Yes, there's often a almost relational, transactional element in it. I mean, every time, for instance, that I am rude to my wife, it was always caused by something she did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was.
Do we understand this now?
Yes.
Are we beginning?
From your
are we beginning to
perspective.
understand how this works?
Yeah, and then what she did to you was your fault.
I know I had 10 affairs, but I wasn't being loved properly at home.
That's right.
She was cold.
Oh,
But what happens
I want
is,
you to know that for whatever extent I can forgive you, I so do.
but what happens is people have this concept, often entering into the divorce process, where they think, I am the wronged party. I will benefit if everyone understands and buys into my concept that I am the wrong party. I will do better financially. I will do better in terms of how I am perceived by the community, my family. And that I found to be counterproductive in trying to reach a solution that lets both people go on with their lives, especially if there are children.
I got to ask Shawn something as the serious family lawyer in the picture here. Shawn, to what extent historically did that used to be true?
Did what used to be true?
That if let's say my wife came to her senses and started having affairs on me or something like that, and I decided to divorce her because it hurt my pride so much, which actually probably would. Yeah. Anyway, would I benefit in like 25 years ago in the divorce procedure, or in the final judgment, or in the settlement agreement?
So you're showing your age. Try 40 years ago. Number one. But yes, you would. There would be a benefit to you.
How much?
It could be in terms of division of the estate. It could be in terms of whether there's alimony or not. Now, in some states, like I know a person that was divorced in New Hampshire, and the opposing party kept trying to bring in fault and was like willing to make up things like domestic violence and
Yes.
things like that in order to get an advantage in the settlement. And so there's some states where you can bring in like partial fault.
I see. All right.
But it does give you an advantage. I mean, the person that commits the wrong is in some way or form punished. But what ended up happening, like, you know, in the old days, what you would have happen is PIs would be hired to set somebody up so that there could be fault. And somebody would agree, okay, I'll be at fault. So, well, let's hire a prostitute. I'll be seen coming out of this hotel room, and we'll call that my adultery, so we can finally get out of this marriage that neither one of us really want to be in. Because the problem with no fault versus fault is you had to show grounds. You had to show a reason for why there had to be a divorce. And those reasons varied from state to state. You know, sometimes it's things like alienation, you know, like lack of affection or abandonment or adultery was a big one.
Or you went to Las Vegas.
Well, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
There you go.
Except the wedding vows.
Except for the wedding vows.
Yeah, they get left behind if you go there. But people used to go to Reno all the time to get divorces because it was quick and easy, and they didn't have to deal with their local state rules, right?
Yeah. I mean, weird stuff like that did happen, and so, but now, I mean, with no fault, you can be a real jerk and cause the divorce, but there won't be a legal benefit to the other party. Now, where fault is kind of creeping back in, and I think actually in a positive way, is if you commit domestic violence against your spouse, and then you are imprisoned because of that domestic violence, your spouse does not have to pay you spousal support because of your inability to earn. They actually passed a piece of the family code in California to say that, to protect people that were bad. If you commit domestic violence, that can have an impact on what the alimony payments should be.
So anyway, we got this situation now. You say fault is creeping back in the DV situation. What about the individual who comes to one of us and is, I mean, I get this all the time mediating, where there will sort of be this nod in my direction from one person or another, sort of confirming or affirming to me, well, this other person really does do this. You know, this person is doing this, and it would be like her or like him to hide this or that when the disclosures, for instance, are already in. And it would be like it's almost to get advantage even in a mediating process. And now I will say psychologically, and everybody who's ever been to court has seen this, that somebody who is psychologically more difficult really does make it harder for a judge to be completely impartial. It's not that they won't change their rulings, but they'll say it in a crankier way to the crankier litigant or the crankier attorney for sure.
Well, I mean, having sat as a judge before, as a privately compensated temporary judge, I've had cases where you do get angry at people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's very hard for you to not want to throw a book at them, so to say.
So, but what happens in our process, alternative dispute resolution, when we have folks coming in and one is, wronged, and we can see, yes, he did have the affair. Okay. There's no question about it. Everyone agrees it happened. And yet the other party is saying, I want to exact revenge through this process because I am so hurt and the marriage was destroyed by this behavior.
He needs to do the right thing.
Right. And the right thing is to be punished.
The right thing is to let the settlement go greatly in the other person's favor. That's
Correct.
The right thing.
Correct.
Right.
So, I mean, I had one a couple of years ago where it was the most one-sided deal I've ever seen. And she maintained control of all of his assets. He gave her his pension, and she would pay him stuff when she felt like it was appropriate to pay him things. and I sent him to an attorney. I was the mediator, and I said, look, when I write this marital settlement agreement, the way you've instructed me to write it, I want you to know I'm very good, and this will stick. Do you really want that? Yes, that's what I need to do. It's what I need to do. So I sent him to his attorney, and she's freaking out because it's very one-sided. That's what he wanted to do, and so he agreed to a very one-sided deal. But what makes me afraid about these things is that guilt wears off.
So that was his penance, you are saying?
That was his penance, but I'm worried like a year later, I'm going to get the email. Why did you prepare this agreement? And I'm like, I told you, I put it in writing in several different places. I put it in writing in the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But, when people are feeling guilty or feeling angry, they don't think things through clearly.
Could a person write in a reversibility phrase of some kind for those circumstances?
I mean, I would have liked to, but they didn't let me.
I get it.
I had a situation where a fellow had had an affair for over 20 years in the marriage. There were adult children. And he told me, he goes, I'm going to give the wife the house, all the equity in it. It's the only way I can get my children back.
Oh, that's transactional.
That's
yes.
transactional.
So again, I did all the CYA letters in the world, and he did it, and his attitude was, it's only money. I can always make more of that.
Nothing wrong with that. That's a rational choice.
Yes. Yeah.
I had a case similar to that. He gave her the house because she was caring for their adult son that had some special needs. And it wasn't special enough where there would be adult child support. And so he said, well, this is what she'll need. And I know I could probably get half the house, and I'm giving up a lot here, but I want her to have this.
Yeah.
So
that actually is really a pleasure when it happens.
Yeah,
is for us, because it's something that would never happen in court, and it's something that works for their family. And even though they're getting a divorce, if they have children, they're still going to be a family in some form.
Well, and then you have these cases where they come into mediation, and I had one where she looked like she'd swallowed a lemon the entire time. Her mouth was pursed, and she was angry, and she kept talking about the mistress. It was always the mistress.
Yeah.
And he had the excuses, Scott, like what you were talking about. Well, you drove me to this. If you wouldn't have been such a cold and mean and heartless wife, I wouldn't have had this affair. And she was hearing none of it, but there was finally a point in the negotiation where I just said to him, you know what, I'm going to take you aside, and I'm just going to read you the riot act in front of her. I'm basically going to rip you a new one, and it's going to be from her perspective what you did to this marriage. Are you okay if I do that? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. And so I did. I just ripped into him totally from her perspective. And it was kind of hard for him to hear. But then when it was over, she was a different person.
Mm-hmm.
Because she had been able to hear someone else articulate in a way that was better than what she was articulating, because this person that was articulating it wasn't so wrapped up in the emotions.
And also you were acknowledging her feelings in a way that he had not, And
I told her, I said, look, there's nothing we can do about this. It's not like we can punish him unless he agrees to it, but maybe it will help you to hear, and for him to really hear it, how you feel. Yes, I need that. And it helped her. And then they reached a settlement, and I've had a couple of cases like that.
I call that passing a stone.
Like as in a kidney stone?
Yeah. It's like there are times when you just got to do that thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Shawn, you are a fairly remarkable therapist, lawyer.
Well, I'm not a therapist, but I play one on Zoom.
Oh. I've been in meetings with you. So we remain in this no man's land, if you were, and no woman's land of what do we do? Is there a way to discuss even generally how can we manage actual fault when the law isn't interested? How can we do that? I think you just described a way. One way is to put fault into its own category of you know, the feelings that live there and get them out there expressed and in a way so that we can at least set it aside long enough to make a rational decision about how to manage, the property and the things going forward so these people can have decent lives financially in their futures. But the flip side of that is, when people are claiming fault almost falsely in some hope that that will either guilt the other person into whatever, or more times in my experience, ignoring their own contributions,
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, how many times have you ever seen a
contributory
case?
negligence.
Right. Have you ever seen a case where one party was completely innocent and the other
Yep.
party was a complete horse's hind end? It's
Snow
usually
White
a mix.
seldom marries Jack the Ripper, right?
Oh,
yes,
no.
or water seeks its own level.
Yeah.
Or Mother
don't
Teresa doesn't marry Hitler.
And
don't know.
what do you do about the person that wants their day in court? Because if they can just tell their story in front of a judge, they know the judge will side with them and punish this other person.
Well, and
Despite the fact you've told him there is no fault.
That's what Shawn did. Shawn gave that lady her moment in court,
Right.
To an extent, but at the other time,
guy.
I have a lot of people. If I could just get in front of a court and tell this judge what she's done to me or what he's done to me, then they'll see it my way. There's no way a judge is going to whatever. And the answer is that's not true. There is a way, and they do it all the time. And they can't look at your fault. They can't look at who was bad and who was good.
And they have 20 cases just before you and 20 cases behind you, and you're just another couple who can't agree how to divide the furniture, who used to be able to make babies together.
And most of these family law judges, there's a few family law judges that like family law, and we wonder about them.
Very few.
But there's most of them are just there to punch their card, and they hate family law. And the reason they hate family law is because of people like you coming into court thinking that you're going to get your day in court.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They really are frustrated by it, and they really hate it, and they really don't care about your problems. Really, honestly, they don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, I want to stick up for those judges because it's not their job to care about your problems.
Yeah,
it is their job to resolve the legal problem that is presented to them.
That's better said than what I said. Yeah, you're right.
Well, I mean, have we ever heard of people's dockets being a bit behind? Come on.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. I mean that's one of the advantages over court, because when you go to court, like a simple motion for spousal support, that's 20 minutes. And you're trying to boil down your whole purpose of marriage and your relationship and all of this stuff into a 20-minute court proceeding.
That's so interesting. So really what Mark was saying about people wanting their day in court, it isn't just, this is the final resolution of all of these years of this, that, and the other. And God, is it going to go out with such a 20-minute whimper? Yeah.
Well, and it's so anticlimactic too when people come in and they sign their papers for their divorce. And it actually it's kind of a psychological letdown for a lot of people, because it's been all of this stuff, all this fight, and just to get to a place where we meet in this impersonal conference room and sign some papers. And
I did a case years ago. It was a collaborative case, full team, fairly prominent family. And after it was over, wife invited the whole team out to dinner with husband. And as she had on the table, in the middle of the table, a divorce cake. It was a multi-tiered cake with figures of man and woman at the top, where the wife had decapitated the husband and was holding his head in her hand as raspberry sauce dripped down the side. Husband walks in, and he's the last to arrive, looks at it, and he goes, well, there it is. All the hostilities out there on the table. Now we can have a nice dinner. And we did.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, those divorce cakes are something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, people have divorce parties where they invite their friends and simulate murdering their spouse on their cake. Whatever works for you. But, I've also seen divorce ceremonies. And some of them cheesier than others, and some of them pretty cool. Like I saw one where, you light the candle when they get married, and, you take the two candles and you light one. Well, this time they take the one candle, they light two candles, and they blow out the one in the middle. And then I also saw one where people actually hired a spiritual advisor to come in, and these were a little on the new agey side, and they had this spiritual reckoning with one that looked into each other's eyes and said some divorce vows. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Yeah.
And everybody is different, and some people don't want to be part of anything like that, but having some kind of a way to mark the day or mark the end does a lot for
right,
closure.
because I think it is anticlimactic to a large degree. Because if you think about the antithesis of it, which is the wedding and all that leads up to it, and good Lord, especially if you have a big reception, it's like, well, we have this huge event at the start, and then we just sort of sneak away and get divorced, and we don't tell anybody, and no one's there.
Well, I had this. It happens so quick when you do it at court, when they read in status. Sometimes you go to court and you read status, and most of the time we do marital settlement agreements, but sometimes you go to court and you read it in. And the judge asks, okay, is there reconcilable differences, date of marriage? Okay, would counseling help? No. All right, we're done. I pronounce you divorced. And that's it. Nothing else happens.
I didn't get to say what I wanted to say. Well,
exactly. And I thought I was going to get to, I had this one person thought they were going to be able to give a speech. Like, no, you don't get to give a speech. It's over. And they don't know what to do.
They can go have a speech on the hall, maybe.
Well, and I said that to this person. Said, if you guys want, she doesn't really want to hear from you. But if you want to try to say something out in the hallway, we can maybe arrange that. And then she didn't want to. And then she didn't want to talk to him. So
he chased her down the stairs.
Well, he wanted to. Or I had one lady chasing a guy through the parking lot. Let's just say his name was Jim, and she was like, Jim, and chasing him down through the parking lot of the courthouse because she wanted to say something to him. He didn't want to be part of her. He wanted a divorce. So sometimes these things are really hard to do. But if you can figure out a way, even if it's a private kind of a moment, to maybe you write in your journal, or you go for a walk on a beach, or you.
I think what you're highlighting here is that there is an emotional component to this. It's not just legal and financial.
Yeah.
And the more that can be addressed during the process, it won't feel like it's so sudden, because as we all know, everybody is in a different position. It's seldom they both want the divorce the same at the same time by the same amount.
Or for the same reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times they blame each other, and they're both have valid points.
Yeah.
But mediation is a unique place where, the judge won't give you that time, but in mediation, you can express a lot.
And you can bring in someone like Scott who can help you express it in a way that your spouse can hear you, probably for the first time in years.
Yeah.
Because how often do we see somebody trying to tell somebody something that's really important to them, and they don't get off, first base because they've had this fight for 25 years, Well,
a lot of times as mediators, we're playing the role of translator.
Sure.
They've been having the same fight, never hearing each other for 35 years. And then what happens in mediation is you just say it in a different way from a different perspective so that they can finally hear it. I'm sure you do this in marriage counseling, don't you, Scott? You kind of help them hear each other and see each other.
Sure. I'm more struck as I'm listening to you guys who are, I've been doing marriage therapy for 40 years, but I am not as experienced in the collaborative world as you guys are. I'm not. I haven't done as many cases by any means, anywhere close to what you guys have done. But I've done
you're awfully good at it.
Well, whatever. But where I'm going with this is how struck I am at the times when, even with the whole team, we are making it. We've given them such a good shot at a more reasonable resolution where where one person's loyalty to the fight is so profound. Now they want to be in collaborative. They don't want to spend, 1/3 of their estate in a battle. I mean, collaborative is expensive too compared to simple mediation, but it's like nothing compared to a real court battle.
And it doesn't take years of your life necessarily.
Right. But it's, I am struck by the times when it was absolutely beyond my and your respective powers to get people to not, I mean, even to the extent of acting out in the room and, just acting out the old battles. And it's like, and it got, sometimes the other side would even demand that the concessions, excessive concessions, be written into the agreements. As Shawn was discussing earlier, we've had that go on. Sometimes, even with all of that benefit and all of that opportunity and profound invitation, people will not stop the fight.
And it really hurts the people that are doing the fighting.
It hurts them, and it hurts the kids.
Yep. What's that saying? Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping for the other person to die.
Something like that. Yeah. Well,
yeah, and it does. It hurts the children, and that's what really is tragic for me is when you see people absolutely
and the children
destroy their kids.
I mean, we will get, irrespective of the process you use, you will come up with a financial settlement. There will be a support payment if it's warranted. And what's left? The only contact between you where there's something you can disagree about is the children. And, send them with messages to the other spouse. Make them deliver your vitriol, as they go for the weekend.
Or you didn't get your day in court with the judge, but you're going to get your day in court with the children.
Exactly.
Make sure the children know the story.
Yep.
And that's really damaging.
Yep.
I mean, what do you think, Scott? I think it's all the kids need to know is they got two parents that love them. Do they need to know the details of the adultery?
Oh, no. I mean, I spend a good portion of my life in business because of those little messages that got sent back and forth. Don't tell people not to do that. Yeah.
I'm destroying your future.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of kids whose parents destroyed them, right?
I have a huge business interest here.
I think it's actually a really valid point. You want to continue this fight? Make sure you save some money for the therapy bills.
Yeah,
well,
make sure.
It's like young men, young women, confused even more than all the rest of us in their relationships, because vindictiveness has been their bread and butter in their homes, and men being smarmy and just nasty to their women, and women being just awful to their men. Yeah.
So that's the pattern that the child learns as normal.
Well, it's almost yes, it's the pattern, but it's almost the I see it transmitted most directly as a form of rhetoric. It's how they speak. It's the words in their heads. It's their script. Well, she's a this, he's a that. It's like, well, and it's that the will to sort of calmly and patiently be curious and try to understand the other person, who at least conventionally, typically is an other gender from us and comes certainly from a different family, a different universe. It's like, oh, she's just this, or he's just that. Oh my God, she's always that. He's always those sort of diminishing structures of communication. He's just a.
So what you're talking about is people talking in absolutes about the other person. You always, you never. And those extremes are what we try to sort of get, at least if we have those issues, I will try to get people to qualify them. Well, is there anything she really did well in the marriage? Well, she was a really good cook. Great. Have you ever told her that? Yeah, I tell her all the time. You know what? You might want to tell her again that you've really
Yeah.
appreciated all the meals she
Or-
cooked for you over the years, you know?
Or you can just help them reframe it. You know, he never cleans the dishes. He leaves the house a pigsty, and the kids they're always in that horrible mess. And you can reframe it. So you're just concerned about cleanliness in the home. Where you take the bite out of it and
Right,
make it a
yeah.
neutral statement. You're concerned about cleanliness.
Well, some of the people that are like the ones that I was alluding to earlier, they wouldn't fall for that for a moment. No, that's not it. I'm very relaxed about that. I'm talking
I
about
hate
what
him.
a big thing he is.
Right. He's a degenerate. Like, don't you get it? You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, really.
Obviously, you're not listening to me and understanding what I'm saying about him. I'd appreciate it if you'd pay more attention to what I'm saying.
We're always training people to learn to let go, aren't we?
Yeah. And it can be hard, especially if someone feels wronged. That's hard to let go.
Especially when that wrong is legitimate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, dang it, that
Yep.
sucks. That really was
It
terrible.
really does. It really does. But you know what? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen. And I think that forgiveness benefits the forgiver more than the forgiven.
I think that's true.
And I've been in that situation and was very reluctant, and it took me time. But after I did it, I felt it was gone.
Mhm.
You know, and as you say, hanging on to the poison doesn't do the system good.
It's like a weight is lifted. And in most religious traditions, when you hear about forgiveness, it's that kind of concept, whether it's Christianity or Buddhism or you name it.
Yeah.
This concept of just letting go of the burden is a real spiritual plus.
Yes.
But that's hard when you're in the moment and you're in the middle of a negotiation for the biggest financial transaction of your life and where your children are going to sleep.
Because it's like a burr in the saddle. You know, it's just always going to be there until it's not. And learning to ignore that burr in the saddle, sometimes it takes a skill.
Yep.
I want to talk about a slight problem in that universe, which is when a parent really believes that there's a protective element of their issue there that, you know, is it's like, you can't just let go when you really think he's going to do this again. And, you know, we deal with problems like that somewhat frequently too. We have to set agreements that set limits with people, but by and large, yes. Yeah.
Well,
anyway, where are we here?
We've done it again. We've burned through another half hour plus of people's time talking
These
about
people will never forgive themselves for having spent this time this way.
You know?
No, but they'll forgive their spouse, maybe.
Maybe so.
Maybe not.
Eh.
Well,
Hard to do sometimes, but again, you are the one that will benefit if you can find your way clear to do it.
and that's
Truly.
so true. And people, we've seen this. We've seen this go really well, and we've seen it go really badly. And there is a way forward where it's better.
Yeah. And we'd like to help. And if you need some legal advice, how would they contact Counselor Weber?
Well, for any dispute that you have, you can go to WeberDisputeResolution.com. WeberDisputeResolution.com. We connect you with the person that can resolve your dispute. And Mark, what if they need a divorce financial consultant?
Go to my company website, Pacific Divorce Management, www.pacdivorce.com, pacdivorce.com. Easy to contact me through there.
And Scott, if they need to work through some struggles they're having with letting go, who would they call?
Well, they would call me. I actually answer my own phone. I am Scott Weiner. I am JD PhD. I am at 619-417-5743.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place.
Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.